All right, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Today we're going to be completing lesson number 1. There are indeed 55 lessons total, so we'll see how long this takes, but I guess our primary goal is learning and to know God better, to get to know him in a way that gives us tremendous confidence in him, in his word, and knowing that his word and his worldview is relevant for us today. Indeed, it gives us complete confidence that we have a message that is worth sharing, that it is worth um, basing all of our confidence upon. Um, People call it faith, and they say that in a negative light. Oh, you guys are just that's just faith. We believe in science, concrete things. But in reality, this faith isn't pulled out of nothingness or abstract concepts. It is pulled out of a truth of a person, the person of God, Yahweh, Jehovah, the creator, the intelligent designer of all things, uh, and his word, which has been written and recorded, and that we can learn today about him. So I'm sharing on my screen just a brief review. We are going through key stories, key narratives that are all a part of this overarching, large, lengthy meta narrative. And so you see, we're at creation, and next will be the fall. Following that, the flood, Tower of Babel, Abraham, etc. And we're going to go all the way to the final judgment, Lord willing. We have to have in a narrative, a complete narrative, all the stories in place. One part doesn't make sense in and of itself unless you have the entire structure set up. And so here we're talking about beginnings. In the next few weeks, we'll be focusing on beginnings and why that is so important to our biblical worldview. We saw how God made everything out of nothing. He is so different than us. We take things that exist and we build on top of that, and we make some pretty marvelous creations. We're very creative as human beings. And it is no wonder, because the Bible says we were created in his image, in his likeness. So we reflect his glory and wonder when we make cool things, when we build airplanes, when we make Tesla automotive motors to engines to run off of electricity. These are wonderful creations that come from God. Unfortunately, God is often left out of the picture in the midst of all of these amazing creations. Man says, look at what I did. Look who I'm, this president and CEO of this company, and look at the things that I've accomplished. I am now a millionaire or a billionaire. And so man steals, in essence, the glory of God that belongs to him. But the knowledge, the creativity comes from him. And he allows us to make things and create things like he does, but we cannot do it out of nothing. We are finite while he is infinite. So that makes a creator and creation distinction, this impossibility of the two to merge. There is the infinite creator on one level, and his creation on an entirely different plane. People believe in different worldviews around the world that these two are they can merge. In other words, man, in essence, can become higher and continue to grow and grow in increase in knowledge and value to become God-like. And so you see many religions around the world where mortal men, have become like gods. They have attempted um, uh, to do impossible things and become a higher creation. If we could mute our microphones, that would be very helpful until I open it up for questions and comments. Thank you. So as we continue to go on, we see that God is infinite in all his abilities. He is, while we are finite, we have limitations. He created us in his image with abilities like the ability to love, to have knowledge, the ability to have to choose right and wrong. We need him, the infinite God, to guide us and to give us direction. So he gave us a conscience to reflect his holiness, but our conscience not rooted in him and his word will deviate. It'll diverge into a whole nother direction. If we are left to our own imagination, we have to be rooted in our creator and our designer, our God. So now we're going to continue with the study where we left off on divine institutions. And we're going to go through 3 different divine institutions. Now, what are these divine institutions? God did not make us in a vacuum to then conduct our lives in whatever way we wanted to conduct it, to do whatever our imagination led us to do. He actually designed us with intentionality, with purpose, with parameters, with institutions, as we're calling it here. He is therefore a God of order. He orders things. Some might argue, but Mike, when God created the heavens and the earth, it said that the earth was void and formless. So God is a God of chaos. And that is not the case. If anyone's going to take a clay to make a pot out of it and design this beautiful pottery, they need a lump of clay to start with. And so God created matter, and then out of matter began designing and forming. God is orderly, 6 full days of work, organizing, bringing forth his ideas and his thoughts, and so that it functions in an orderly manner, in a manner that is in harmony with one another. You may recall different TV shows, ideas that are propagated today. People seek harmony. They seek especially harmony with nature. And inside man, there's just something that wants to return desperately back to the original way God designed things, but they're not looking in the right spots. They must go back to the original design by God, and that the knowledge of that comes from his word. So man tries to find harmony with the ecosystem and animals and nature and plants, and among, as people say, among races, among cultures. People are trying to bring in peace and harmony, but they're very frustrated because they're not going to the source of where this was originally designed, God and his word. So God, in his orderly way, designed things in such a way that they work really well, like a well-oiled machine. And he created institutions. Now we're going to go through 3 primary institutions today as an introduction of what God originally designed in this space of time. But we're going to notice that over time, God adds additional institutions on our plates as human beings, and in order for things to function orderly. And he does that after the fall, after people have made a choice to govern themselves and be the author of their own future and their own reality. God places certain parameters in place later. But these 3 that we'll talk about are sufficient. They would have been sufficient in and of themselves in a perfect world that God created. So he makes these divine institutions, and they would be called the responsible dominion as number 1, the marriage is number 2 and family is number 3. So we're going to go through these and starting with responsible dominion. If society would return back to God's original design for these 3 institutions and function in God's ideal way, in the way we were intended to be, then we would see a massive amount of transformation take place on this earth. We are talking catastrophic change in how man conducts government, how he conducts his family, how he works, how he raises his children. It would be mind-boggling. So God, as we talk about this first level of institution, the responsible dominion that he gave us, it stems from him being the creator. Here we call it, just in simple basic words, the big boss, the man in charge, the authority, the designer of all things, the creator. He has authority over all of creation as the creator. He owns all of creation. Have you ever made anything? I've made a few things. I like working with my hands. I enjoy it. One time years ago, I thought I'm going to make myself a knife. So I found pieces of metal in my uncle's sawmill he had just kind of laying around, and I began shaping the metal, grinding it down, forming the blade of it and heating it up to temperature, and then I chose to make a handle for it out of aluminum. So I gathered a bunch of aluminum cans and I took them and I melted them down. I made this little form in the sand where we lived by our house, and I poured the aluminum down into the mold, and then it turned out horrible. But I took it and ground down that again, and made a really decent knife, and that was my knife. It was kind of like my creation, although I did use pieces from here and pieces from there, but it was a free creation, and it was mine. Do you guys think if I chose to do something with that knife, would there be anyone that would prohibit me to do? Let's say I wanted to use that knife to dig in the flower garden. Would that be okay? I think so. You would say, Mike, that's your knife. You can do whatever you want to with that knife. You just can't kill anybody with it. That would be morally wrong. But you can do basically whatever you want to. You can use it at the dinner table. You can use it as a garden tool. You can just take it and stick it on your strap it on your side and look cool with it. You can take trips with it. It's your knife. Do whatever you want to with it. In fact, if I wanted to, I could, if I was dissatisfied or displeased with my creation, I could have boiled that thing back down again to its original state and reworked it and remade it to the design that I liked. But because I made it, it is mine. I own it. I have ownership over it and possession. God, as the creator, can do whatever he wants to with his creation. He has that right. The right is given to him because he is the owner, the creator, the maker of that thing. He made creation. He made us. And he made us in such a way that we are to be under lords, to be stewards of his creation. He decided in his design and his desire to share the responsibility with us. and to take pleasure in watching us rule very well and very responsibly. Now, what are we to rule over? Well, obviously nature, this world was created for us. It was created for Adam and Eve and mankind, and for our enjoyment and our pleasure. it wasn't created for God's um, enjoyment and pleasure, in the sense that he would create this beautiful grape so that God could sit by the beach and watch the ocean and the fish jump while eating grapes. He didn't make papaya for his own enjoyment and pleasure of savoring food. And he didn't make air so that he could just breathe it in and enjoy the fresh air that comes into our lungs, or make beautiful flowers so that the colors would bring him great satisfaction. God doesn't need all of that. He doesn't need it. He's not dependent. God made those things for you and I. He made them for his creation, for our enjoyment and our pleasure. Sometimes we think, even as Christians, that pleasure is a bad thing. And understandably, because pleasure is often tied in with very, very sinful, and we'll get into what sin is here in the next few lessons, but pleasure is often tied into sinful and evil behavior, behavior that is man just does it whatever he imagines, and it's out of boundaries, it's out of control. And so pleasure is often tied into that. But God made us so we can enjoy himself, enjoy him, and enjoy the things he made. We are designed to take pleasure in his creation and to lord it over the creation, to lead the creation, to serve creation, serve as in work it, develop creation, care for it, be stewards of creation. So when God made man, he didn't make man to be eating grapes all day and not doing anything. Let me mention in passing something that touches us very, very near and dear to our heart, and that is retirement. We especially North Americans in the United States are programmed from a very early age to work for retirement. And then upon arriving at retirement, we have a nest egg that is sufficient to live off for the rest of our remaining days, for our own enjoyment and pleasure. And I'm not saying we all Christians buy into that, but it's just a general cultural ideal. We work extremely hard for money, and we obtain money and we hoard money for the long terms. And I'm not bashing it. I'm just pulling out the idea that sometimes we sense that retirement is when you do nothing. it's when you rest from all labor, when in reality God never did turn off that purpose that we were designed for, to work and to have responsible dominion. We never were given removed that area of responsible dominion from our lives. That is something that we carry all the way, now that death is here, all the way to our end of days. So retirement isn't a time when you cease to have activity. Rather, it is a shift in your focus and activity. It's a shift. It's not a lack of activity where you do nothing and have nothing to do all day. Even fishing is an activity. So we're not knocking pleasure here, where I'm just stating that inactivity is not God's design. It is actually responsible dominion in all stages of our life. The other important thing that comes out of this is that God gave man the responsibility to work, to be productive. And he says here, in Genesis 1:28, God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and govern it, reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and all the animals that scurry along the ground. So God, who is the owner and the responsible one over all of creation, shares his job with man, so that man and God could become co-workers in ruling this earth and to govern it. Man obviously would be a foolish governor or emperor or ruler or president or any kind of a leadership authority. He would be a fool if he tried to do that without God. Because God designed us to work in cooperation with him, to be stewards of his authority over his creation. And God chose, he saw fit that it was this way, that he governs the world, that God would govern over his creation as the big boss, as the owner, with man, through man and through his abilities and his skillfulness, always walking in dependency on God, receiving instruction from God, connected with God, asking God what his thoughts are, his opinion, as the underlord, as the one they were to be accountable to. So you see that God is really comfortable here with giving this massive creation over sun, moon, and stars, the galaxies, all that is in earth. He handed it over to mankind to rule, and everything that's in it, and he gave man all the tools he needed to do that. He gave man love. He gave man wisdom. He gave him knowledge, and wanted a man to continually seek more knowledge to better rule and to guide and to nurture. He gave man a conscience to know how far can I go with this thing? Maybe I'm going too far by considering such and such. No, I have a conscience that helps me determine right and wrong. And if I'm ever in question, I'll ask God about it. I'll find out what his word says. So God was very comfortable at governing this world through mankind, knowing that he had equipped man with everything he needed for his job. So then it says the Lord God planted a garden in Eden in the east, and there he placed man, the man that he had made. And the Lord God placed the man, this is verse 15, in the Garden of Eden to tend and watch over it. So you see certain aspects of God coming out here. And one of the key features is that God is a laborer. He's a worker. God isn't lazy. And if we are lazy in our own character, our own tendencies, we're not reflecting God's character in our lives. God is responsible. He creates things. He's a hard worker. God took 6 days when it came to this earth to create things, and he diligently started his project and brought it to completion. It wasn't a half-done job. He did it well. He did it with excellence, and he is a hard worker. Now, it's true, he rested on the seventh day and henceforth ceased his creative activities, right? At least here on earth, we see God as continuing to labor in different ways, in different manners, and to create, as we see in Revelations. But we'll touch on those in a little bit in the future. But we see God making things. So he placed Adam in a role, in a place where he could see God's work, and then have a model to work with, so that he can copy that, he can duplicate it. So first of all, Adam sees God's faithful setting up of the Garden of Eden, where he's placed. He's brought into existence. He's given birth, so to speak, life within the Garden of Eden. He's placed there, and he is observing all of the way God designed it. So he sees a model in how things are supposed to be. And now he knows what to do, especially under God's direction. So God is showing Adam how things are supposed to be, what the ideal is, and what his responsibilities will be, and to be like God in that sense of carrying over and tending to the garden, all the animals that were within, and to to follow his example. So what are the lessons that we learn from God's model? First of all, he doesn't stick Adam in a vacuum where he just expects him to know everything. God shows him things. God allows Adam to experience him. He shows him with his physical eyes and tangible senses. You know how we have eyes, ears, nose, mouth, touch. We have senses, and God allows Adam with all of his sensory abilities to see creation, and then to watch God as he's laboring together with God to care for these things. God is a discipler. He shows people. He doesn't just give word instructions. We often limit our discipleship to just words. We do that. It's our tendency, especially in our Western model of our culture, where we go to school. We sit down, and we receive lots of information that's spoken to us. And it's healthy to follow God's model here, where he's actually discipling with real things, experiencing things together with Adam. It's not just telling Adam things, but it's being with Adam. And we see that in this Genesis 1 and 2, where God is with Adam in the garden, and Adam gets accustomed to him visiting in the cool of the day, it says. So they're interacting, they're having communion together. And so God gives Adam work in governing over his creation. He also gives Adam ownership. And God is showing his ownership by naming things. In Genesis 1, 5, and 10, it says God called the light day. So God is calling things, he's naming things, demonstrating his ownership. And he's gonna pass that responsibility off onto Adam. So in the darkness, he calls night. God called the dry ground land, and the waters seas, and God saw that it was good. So now you see God passing along that naming responsibility over to Adam. So the Lord God formed from the ground all the wild animals and all the birds of the sky. He brought them to man to see what he would call them. And the man chose a name for each one. So you see God passing on this ownership role from himself. He's empowering Adam. He's transferring ownership to Adam. He's passing on authority to Adam. He's passing on responsibility to Adam. I think of my own family and how difficult it is for me as a father to pass responsibilities over to my kids in fear of failure, in fear that they might in some way mess up. In some way they might not end up right or make some really bad choices. So oftentimes we as parents, we wrestle with releasing that responsibility, releasing authority, releasing this this dominion, this stewardship to our own children. Whereas God designed it this way. He himself is setting up the scenario so to empower mankind, and so that we in turn are, like him, are empowering those around us. We're equipping them, we're training them, we are passing on responsibility and ownership to one another and sharing that together to become teammates, to work in unity, to in our case, because it's a learned process, we have to learn to work in harmony with one another. It's not something that happens naturally, and we'll talk about that later. So God's given ownership to Adam, and he's picking up these innuendos. He's naming all the animals, and he's, you know, there's things he's learning through this as he goes through the process. Genesis 1:31 says, then God looked over all he had made, and he saw that it was very good. It was exceedingly and overly abundantly good. It was exceptional. And evening passed and the morning came, marking the sixth day. So God, you see here, takes pleasure in what he makes. He didn't make all this like it was a waste of time or a real headache. And man, you know, I really messed up Adam. I should have stuck his nose on the other side. You know, man, why did the belly button have to go in the middle? Maybe I should have stuck that somewhere on top of his head. God doesn't repent from the way he designed things. He says it was very good. It was awesome. It was really cool. You know, you can use different expressions to fill in the blanks there. But God takes pleasure in his creation. Fast forward that to today. In our lives right now, after the fact that Jesus came to earth, after he died and was buried and rose again, after we were indwelt with the Holy Spirit and sealed with him, we were renewed and made new in Christ Jesus. And he takes pleasure in forming you and making you into his likeness, to transforming your life and my life, so that more and more each day, as time goes by, as experience goes by, as more knowledge increases in us, that we can become more and more like him, to flourish in him, to thrive in our as we have been made new once again, a new creation. Just like Adam was a brand new 0-mile vehicle. You know, he's this brand spanking new, just barely driven off the lot. God makes us new again, like that, like Adam, when he made us in Christ Jesus, a new creation. Now, yes, death has not fully taken a hold of our lives, where we've our bodies have died and the old has passed and the new has come, and so we won't fully see our salvation until we are in heaven. And this old flesh has been shed. So there's limitations as to how much newness we experience today, limitations we often put on ourselves through lack of faith. But God gives us the ability to experience him, and it's in his pleasure that we experience him. It's in his pleasure that we become like him and share in his glory, and to glorify him through our lives. Any comments or questions at this point? I'll open up the microphone in case anyone has a thought or two.
Thank you for what you're doing.
All right, let's continue. I don't have unlimited time, infinite time, so I have to keep moving. All right, so God takes pleasure in us, and it was according to his pleasure that we participate in ruling and having dominion over this land. I have dominion. God's given me dominion, and this is kind of a strange wording for us today. We think more of stewardship, right? uh, but I have dominion. I own things. I own a house or vehicle. I have under my care and responsibility as a man, my wife, my children. Um, Now, I don't own them in the sense of slavery, if you know what I mean. So we don't want to misunderstand this concept, but we are a family, and I'll get into that into the second institution here and the third one. But God's given me responsible dominion over many things. Um, Over time, I believe, as we gain as we responsibly conduct our lives and work hard, work according to God's plan, I believe God extends to us additional responsibility, and that a responsibility and dominion can indeed increase. There are people on earth who have greater influence than myself. For example, we have a president of the United States. So, fortunately, I don't have to run this country. I'm quite content not to, and I'm happy someone else is doing it. But we have a president over this country that has been granted, however controversial you may feel about that, or we may feel, he has been granted responsibility over an entire nation of people and a country, dominion. So we have people who have greater responsibility than others, but God has given us the ability to lead, to be responsible in the area of influence of which we have. All of us have some level of influence and responsibility, and he's given us as mankind, and we all fit into that category, these institutions to give us the framework of responsible dominion. Now, the psalmist captures it well, and I'm just going to focus on verse 5. It says, you made them a little lower than God, and crowned them with glory and honor. You gave them charge of everything you made, making all things under their authority, the flocks, the herds, and the wild animals, etc. So the psalmist captured it very well, that yes, we've got a job. We're not people that are jobless. We always have a job. From the moment we wake up, the moment we fall asleep, we have responsibility. The question is how are we doing? How are we doing with our responsibility? Are we responsible with those things that God has given us dominion over? It's a question to ask ourselves continually, especially as Christians. We have no excuse because God equipped us with everything that we need for life and godliness. Do we struggle? For sure. We struggle with this thing called sin. But nevertheless, God even gave us a solution for that. Okay. So God even gave us a solution for sin. What excuse do we have? How are we exercising our responsible dominion? So God again, he showed Adam how to be responsible. He spoke things. He experienced things with him. He showed things, and it's a model for us in our lives as well as we work with other people. Let's talk about work a little bit, just briefly. Is work evil? Is it a curse? I've heard that a lot. Mondays has to be some of the worst days of the week. It's the worst day ever. I have to wake up in the morning and go to work. And you have to remember, we as Christians, especially mature believers who've been believers a while, we have moved away as God is perfecting us. We've moved away from bad habits. I'm not saying we've broken every bad habit, but we're in this process of being sanctified and renewed, and so we don't have some of the bad habits. I'm not saying everybody, but some of us have kicked some bad habits over time, and that's a good thing. while others are, Monday's the worst day. They have a hangover. There is the weekend was just party, and now we got to go back to work, and it's just like a curse. I go to work, and I have this evil boss, and he just yells at me, and the people I work with swear, and they smoke, and they treat me bad, and so you've got this environment that is very negative, and it causes people to say, this must be bad. Work must be evil. I don't like this. um, is it true that in a perfect world, man should not have to work? I think I already touched on this just briefly. And the answer is simple. No, God didn't create us for inactivity, but to work. He made work within his parameters, his design for us. And it's not a curse. You see that when God gave man responsibility, it was for his enjoyment, for his productivity. It was satisfying, just like God takes pleasure. It took pleasure in his creation and saw that it was good. Man has the same ability to take things, make it, produce it, and say, "Whoa, that that was good. I did a good job." Now you have to be watch out for pride, but it's even nicer when someone else comes up and says, "Hey, man, you did an awesome job," and you get a pat on the back. Praise is very good thing to do, to affirm people and say, "Look, you did a great job. Good job." And we take pleasure in that. We enjoy that, and it's because God designed us this way. He did not make work evil. He did not make it a curse. Some may say, "But Mike, didn't God curse the ground?" Well, yeah, he cursed the ground after the fall, but it was the ground that was cursed as a consequence of the fall, man's sin. He didn't curse work. Okay. He cursed the ground that we have to work on, and which really frustrates work. The environment sometimes is frustrating. And God told Adam, it's by the sweat of your brow that you're going to work. So no, now what was supposed to be just really enjoyable, now it's just going to be that much harder for you. What you could have done in 2 hours, now it's going to take you 10 hours or 20 hours. It's just going to be harder. Proverbs 18 talks about laziness. A lazy person is as bad as someone who destroys things. Second Thessalonians says, "Yet we hear that some of you are living idle lives, refusing to work and meddling in other people's business. We command such people and urge them in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ to settle down and work, earn their own living." So God addresses laziness, which would be the opposite of what he designed us for, and that is responsible ownership and to be productive. This area is hammered. I'm hammering it and bringing it out over and over because it's so prevalent in our lives. Isn't work a part of everyday life for us? How many hours do we spend at work? I would say a significant amount of time in our life, if we live to be 80, 90, or whatever, I would say a large portion of our time is spent working. And so work is a central and key part of our life. Therefore, for us to have a clear understanding of work and a healthy biblical foundation for our work ethics and our perspective on work, it will do us well to have a worldview that is sound in this area. I will go as far as to say that we as Christians have over time adopted a worldview that is not healthy toward work, in that we've done the following. We have separated the that which is sacred and that which is secular. I'm not going to go into deep detail today on that, but think on that for a little bit. We often separate in our minds that which is sacred. Let me explain that just briefly. Sacred would be the pastoral calling, the missionary calling, the call to work in Christian service, those things which are related to worship and leading music. We go to a place that is sacred to worship, but we go to work where it is secular. and we conduct our secular life with a different set of ethics, and therefore my secular job is a lesser role in my mind and my worldview. God has less interest and pleasure in my secular life than he does in my sacred life. We need to get back to a holistic worldview. Why? Because God is holistic. God does not separate those things. God sees work as worship. And I would love to do a study further on in the future, just specifically on this area. And I'll just introduce a word in passing. It's the word avodah. And it is a Hebrew word that is repeated over and over and over in the Old Testament, which combines work, worship, and service. Work, worship, and service. It's why the Jewish people saw their work as worship, and they did things with excellence. I would venture to say that you still see those character traits built on the Torah and the Old Testament prophets influencing the Jewish people today, because there's not a separation of secular and sacred, but a combination, so that everything is indeed sacred and holy for God's glory and his honor, no matter what office I hold, what ministry, so to speak, I hold. Let's move on. I know this would be a really interesting topic to continue to discuss, but let's continue. One thing that Adam and Eve did not do is work for wages. Their work was not connected to pay. We often work today for pay. I say we often do, but that's why we work. We work to get money. I have to pay bills. I have to pay the house bill, the electric bill. So we work and we make money. But Adam and Eve weren't paid. They worked voluntarily out of the pleasure of work, out of the pleasure of productivity, out of responsibility. And if we approach work in that attitude, I'm here not to make money. I don't work for money. I work for the glory of God and the pleasure of being productive and serving people and serving God. And then I get the added joy of compensation for my labor. It would completely transform your attitude as you go to work each day. It would completely transform it. It's no longer this miserable $6 an hour, $9 an hour that barely, it's no longer about the dollar amount. It's about the enjoyment and pleasure of serving and glorifying and worshiping our Lord. Again, I could give a whole session apart on that issue, and maybe we could do that sometime in a different study. But let's continue on. The second, and I'm committed to get through this. So if I can have 10 more minutes for the lost time we had earlier, then that'd be real beneficial. So we have the second divine institution. The first being responsible dominion, the second being marriage. The third is family. So the family comes from the marriage. If you didn't have the marriage in place, you would have no family. Adam had to go through the experience with God of naming these animals. And as he named them, he observed how there was a boy elephant holding trunks with a girl elephant, a boy rabbit and a girl rabbit hopping by. He saw lion and lioness, and he saw hippopotamus, boy, girl. And maybe by then, I don't know, maybe by then there were little bunnies hopping around too. So you kind of get the idea that Adam as an intelligent human being created in God's image had enough intelligence in him to come to the conclusion that something's missing in my life as a man. I lack something. Something's missing. And all these this boy bunny and girl bunny produce little bunnies, but I don't have that thing. And I don't know if he even knew what it was he wanted or needed, but I don't have that thing. And so God allowed him to go through the experience to, I think, sense the need, his need for a teammate. The Bible calls her a helper, a helpmeet. At Genesis 2:20 says, the man gave names to all livestock, to the birds of the heaven and the beasts of the field for Adam, but for Adam there was not found a helper fit for him. Bummer. And then God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and govern it, reign over the fish in the sea, birds in the sky, and all the animals that scurry on the ground. We got an issue here. We got a problem. How is man going to be fruitful and multiply if he doesn't have woman? He needs woman desperately. He can't reproduce. This is really important for us in today's culture. I could stay here in this topic for a very long time, talking about comparing our culture today to what God is, how God has designed marriage and designed mankind to reproduce and to govern, co-govern, man and woman governing together over the earth, king and queen over all of creation. Man is so distorted. I say man, but man gets his ideas from other sources. A source we call Lucifer. But man's really distorted the idea of a helpmeet, to the point of perversion. And this perversion, I don't even want to mention it in a Zoom that's being recorded in a mixed congregation. It's just not healthy. Some of the perversion that where man has gone with this idea of marriage. But God helped Adam see that he needed a partner, that this job for him was too big to accomplish, and that it would be impossible unless he had a helpmeet. And the Lord God said, it is not good for the man to be alone. God knew it too. It's not good for him to be alone. I will make a helper who is just right for him. Now we're using the New Living Translation here, so that's why you're seeing some of the a little different way of expressing than perhaps what we've read in the past. But it says, I will make a helper. I'm the one that's going to provide you, Adam, with what you need. You need to live in dependency on me, receive your information from me, receive your guidance from me. I'm God. I'm the one that created you. I'm the one that designed you. I'm the one that set this whole thing in motion. You need me to show you what you need, what is good for you. And he showed him that he needed a woman, a helper that is just right for him. Now, woman is, it's impossible for woman to reproduce without man, the seed of man. And it is impossible for man to produce little men and little women, children, without the woman and her seed. It's impossible. Man, in all of their imagination today, have not been able to find a way to recreate human beings out of nothing. It takes a man and a woman. And man made woman so that she was a complement for him. And I'll just go this far with my description. And he made man physically with his sexual reproduction design, and woman's design and her reproductive abilities to synchronize in a very special way. And it is impossible for there to be any other way for mankind to fill the earth as God intended for them. Now I know that there's man's trying to use test tubes, etc. I'm not going to go into that, but the point is that God made woman just right for him. God instilled in man an instinct to provide and to protect, and he put in woman a maternal instinct, and these instincts are given to man and woman separately, but because they reflect different characteristics of God. They're different aspects of his nature, and in our, he's infinite in his ability to nurture as in maternal, according to the maternal instincts that we can recognize. And he is infinite in his ability to protect and provide, but he gave man a little bit more of one, and he gave woman a little bit more of the other. And he did it so that they would work together in cooperation as a team, and to complement one another. And these are just different aspects of how God designed things. So God, people say, well, God is a woman. Well, that you can't say that. God is a man. You can't say that either. God put some more of his character in one and more of his character in another, so that they could complement and work together, just like God is perfectly unified in his own characteristics. So God gave man responsibility, not to just to have tons of kids, irresponsibly have kids everywhere and hundreds of kids to take care of, and then not be able to feed them. He gave man a brain and a head to be able to rationalize, to work and discuss with his wife, how many kids can we take care of? What can we feasibly do here? Proverbs supports that idea of administration and planning. He says, know the state of your flocks, put your heart into caring for your herds, for riches don't last forever, etc. And it said down in 27, it says, and you will have enough goat's milk for yourself and your family and your servant girls. So God is communicating to man to care for your family. And that takes us into the next thing. As man and wife works together, they learn to care for their children and their family, the third divine institution. And we're going to close with this final divine institution. And I just want to focus on the responsibility we have as parents to raise our children, and that our children are not intended to be, once they're adults, they can just do whatever they want and we no longer influence in their lives. No, I think we have a lifelong responsibility to our children and and children to their parents. And God gives wisdom just to how far to go with that, where to go with it. He gives wisdom as we seek from him guidance. Deuteronomy emphasizes that you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength, and you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I'm giving you today. Repeat them again and again to your children. We're giving the responsibility to train and raise up our children in the way they should go. This discipline, this family environment, and the discipline that comes within the family environment is what is necessary to train children. We often intend to, especially in our society today, to give third parties that responsibility. We send people off for education. We send them for this. We send them over there for that, and we we give other professionals those responsibilities. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing to send our kids to school, not at all. My suggestion is that we often, in doing that, shed our hands, wash our hands of raising our children in God's ways, and in the way that God sees success. So we're to discipline our children. We're to direct them into the right path, and when they are older, they will not depart from that. So I think we have this long-term relationship with family, children. Here's an example, and I'm going to be closing with this. We have situations in scripture like David here where he didn't provide the discipline necessary. It even says here in 1 Kings 1:6, and it's talking about Absalom. He had never disciplined him at any time, even asking, why are you doing that? David never even questioned Absalom. He could just do whatever he wanted to. And it turned out a disaster. It turned out that he reaped the consequences of his decisions. And Samuel is talking about Eli. I warned him that judgment is coming upon his family forever because his sons are blaspheming God and he hasn't disciplined them. Wow, this is so important. And I know some of us have already been there, done that, so it's too late as far as the younger ages. But now we have grandchildren. Now we have other ways we can influence, and maybe it's not discipline with our responsibility. Should I say this on Zoom? Heavy-handed to provide to inflict a little bit of pain in the behind. Maybe it's not our responsibility now, but we can certainly help our children raise their children, and we can influence in that way. We can provide insight. But parents who today have small children, to be wise and discerning in this area, especially in today's world, where it's very frowned upon to not let children do whatever they want to do, because we will reap the consequences of that. So we have these three divine institutions: responsible dominion, marriage, and family. And these are God's recipes and design for us to follow. God designed it this way, and he called this good. This is good. All things were good when he made them. So why are we so frustrated then? Why are we just so just disappointed and fed up with we beat ourselves up. I messed up with my kids, or I'm bad at work. I wish I made more money. We beat ourselves up. I have a bad marriage. I've messed up several marriages, or whatever. We're frustrated, and of course we're frustrated. We'll talk about that in the next few lessons, how God didn't design us with this frustration. He designed it perfect. However, some people introduced, some individuals introduced some really bad ideas to redesign these institutions, redesign the way things should be. And instead of bringing order as God designed it, chaos was introduced. Let's close there, and I'll hand this.